Hey guys, I've been seeing this article pop up lately, which makes sense because Bitcoin is near all time highs at $67,000 per coin, which is crazy to think about that for the first year after it was developed in January of 2009, it remained under a penny. At one point, initially just fractions of a penny. That's why even the first Bitcoin transaction, which people could talk about, were two Papa John pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoins, which would literally be worth $700 million today. Anyway, this article talks about a guy who accidentally threw a hard drive containing 8,000 bitcoins, which is now worth over $500 million in a landfill. And the story's been around for a while, but now he's taken legal action where he's suing city council for not excavating the site. So James Howells, etched in the history books for accidentally discarding Bitcoin, which is worth more than $500 million today, took a major step in retrieving them. When he threw them away, by the way, which I think was in 2013, his stash was worth like $150,000. So that's a huge blow. That sucks. But now, the amount that it's worth, it actually probably worked in his favor because had he kept it in 2013 and sold it either for 150,000 or maybe a little bit later for $500,000 or a little bit later for $5 million, he might have very well sold it. The hardest thing about like a long-term investment, by the way, is just buying it, sitting on it, holding it. And I highly doubt this guy would have held it up until now, where it's worth what it's worth right now. So it's almost convenient in a way that he didn't even have access to it. This is assuming if he ever gets access to it, it'll work in his favor. But the fact that he couldn't get access to it and now it's worth so much. I mean, I remember buying Bitcoin back in the day for like under $200 a coin, nowhere near the fraction of a penny or a penny. But I didn't hold it all this time. I didn't hold it till it got up to 67,000, unfortunately. But this guy, pretty much, because of his stupidity, because of his mistake, was essentially forced to hold it in his hard drive that he does not have access to, though. But he wants to get access to it, and obviously for good reason. So, what happened? In a last-ditch effort, the Wells-based software engineer filed a lawsuit against Newport City Council for roughly 495.31 million British pounds, or about $647 million, in damages for repeatedly denying his request to excavate the landfill site housing the discarded hard drive, which contains around 8,000 units of Bitcoin, as reported by Wells Online. Howells explained that the lawsuit is a strategy to convince the council to allow an excavation of its landfill, not a reflection of the actual situation. Howells has assembled a team of specialists to carry out the excavation at no cost to the council. He has also proposed to give the council 10% of the recovered coin's value, so they would actually benefit quite good. You know what they should do? They should do a documentary series. It would be kind of like that one show that they made. What was it called? Where those two brothers were like looking for some treasure on, oh, what island was that? Yeah, it was Oak Island, from The Curse of Oak Island. I think that show's been on for like 10 years now. And I can pretty much predict what's going to happen. If it's still on, I don't even know anymore. If it's still on, I'll predict what happens in this season. I'll predict what happens in next season. I'll predict what happens in 2026, 2027. They're not going to find anything. But it's still kind of interesting to watch until you realize they're really not going to find anything.
It is the truth.
But this, they could find the hard drive. But the question is, would the guy still be able to access it? I mean, if this thing has been in the dump, literally the dump, for like 11 years, depending on how degraded that is and what kind of data retrieval, can they still access those Bitcoins? That would be interesting. They should make the documentary. Anyway, the case is set for a hearing in December. Newport Council, however, has dismissed the lawsuit as weak and expressed concerns over potential environmental impacts of the proposed excavation. Why it matters. The bizarre case dates back to 2013, which I'd mentioned earlier, when Howells unintentionally put a hard drive containing 8,000 Bitcoins in the trash while cleaning his office.
You can't believe what I just did.
What? What did you do?
I could tell you what I did, but you won't believe it. It's not believable.
What did you do?
How could I have done that?
Done what?
The compensation that Howells sought was a peak valuation of the stash from earlier this year when the leading cryptocurrency spiked to a new all-time high. As of this writing, 8,000 Bitcoins are worth $514.37 million at a market price of $64,296.34 per unit. I think Bitcoin's at 67,000 right now. But by the time they retrieve this, I mean, it could have very well crashed back down to like 20 or 30,000, maybe 40,000 per Bitcoin, or it could spike. They could be worth 150,000 per Bitcoin. In fact, if they just doubled this figure, let's say Bitcoin got up to 130,000 per coin by the time they recovered this, that means that stash would be worth over $1 billion. And then if he's given 10% to the city council, that's $100 million. It's a pretty good deal, man. Assuming all goes well and all goes according to plan. Yeah, here's that info that I mentioned about Papa John's Pizza. May 22nd, 2010, Florida resident Laszlo Heinses paid 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 Papa John's Pizza in what is largely considered to be the first purchase ever made with the then experiential digital currency. The value of those coins would be worth just under $700 million today. Here's another interesting statistic. So Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation because the way it was designed, the way it was programmed, there's only ever going to be 21 million ever, period. However, how much Bitcoin is lost forever? It's estimated that between 3 to 4 million coins will never be recovered. Possibly this guy's 8,000 coins. Effectively reducing the total Bitcoin supply from 21 million to approximately 17 to 18 million. It's crazy to think about how big of a deal it is because you got university endowment funds invested in it. You got pension funds. I mean, you got Bitcoin ETFs. You got Trump saying he's going to start a U.S. Bitcoin reserve. So there's so much confidence behind it. And a lot of it has to do with scarcity because it's a hedge against inflation, for example, because there's only ever going to be 21 million ever once they're fully mined. They're almost all mined now, by the way. But Bitcoin's kind of interesting, especially if you think about this guy's potential fortune worth $500 million, or maybe by the time they recover, if they recover it, $1 billion just stored on some old ass computer hard drive is worth going to be probably $1 billion or more. But it's hard to conceptualize because we think, if you talk about like cash, if you talk about money, for example, we can still like envision and hold and think of like $1 million, like dollars. Dollars are real, right? Because we can hold it. Even though I think only about 8% of the U.S. money supply is actually in currency. Most of it's digital. Most of it's electronic, kind of like Bitcoin. But it is kind of hard to conceptualize how just some data in an old-ass computer hard drive could literally be worth like $1 billion. Anyway, let me know in the comments section if you think this guy will ever retrieve that Bitcoin. And what was the lowest price you guys have ever bought Bitcoin? If you dabbled in cryptocurrency, what's the lowest you guys ever bought Bitcoin for?